has a happy ever after. And after this story, there's an after party.
Took its sweet, sweet time. I think the computer's moving as slow as I am today.
I can't.
Yeah.
It's like life had been getting worse by like the week for the past couple of months. And then in the past week it's just been getting worse every single day.
Yeah, it's like from March to February, like there was like a decent transitional period. And it's like the person who I was on Monday is not the same person now. Like not by a long shot.
I'm sadder, I'm tireder.
I'm everythinger.
Yeah.
So folks, I promised you that she would return. Amanda Pierce is gracing us with her presence.
Hi.
And miraculously, we're both still alive. I'm Sam Logsdon. This is Happy Ever After Party. And like my dear friend was saying, we're still mad and angry about bigotry in the way things work. So if you thought I was done getting off the soapbox about why you should be avoiding authors whose bigotry is currently affecting minorities, you are wrong. We have more to say about it.
We do.
So, Amanda, you've mentioned this before, but I just want to kind of touch on something that I said last week. And this is specifically regarding authors who have passed away. Okay.
Yeah.
So problematic authors who have passed away, we don't have the luxury anymore of really deciphering what their intentions were. So like with H.P. Lovecraft, there's no good way of determining whether he truly felt that the white race was superior or if he was, here's the thing though, I'm putting this in very big quotes, if he was a product of his time. And the answer to that is that it doesn't matter. Okay.
I will argue on these four. He's not great. He named his cat the N-word.
I know, but it's one of those things where like you're going to hear people say that he was a product of his time argument and he really wasn't racist. And that doesn't matter. If that really and truly is the case, it doesn't matter because some of the things that he has written, the legacy of the person that he was, and yes, the name of his cat, are all things that are considerably hurtful. And the people who they hurt, we should be listening to, not just selfishly trying to reclaim him. So this is for somebody who has passed away. And the reason why I was really excited to talk to you is because we're talking about something that is very much in your lane.
Yeah.
Because we have the luxury of determining that the person who wrote something that has a lot of really hurtful things is also using their platform to promote horrible, terrible TERF ideology. Yeah. We don't need that in our lives.
Yeah,
so,
you don't want to say her name, but can I call her she who must not be named?
Yes. Actually, that's the hashtag I used on IG when promoting this. Yeah. She who must not be named is totally acceptable. But no, I'm not even doing the initials. In part because I don't want to give her any kind of tracking whatsoever. But I also think that it's hypocritical for somebody to go by a chosen name to drag people who use chosen names on a regular basis.
What is it? Is her actual name?
That's getting censored.
Ha! Don't censor me. Free marketplace of ideas.
Get the fuck off my podcast.
I have my soapbox.
You do have your soapbox, and for the people at home, if you're tuning in for the first time, Amanda, can you please explain why this is your lane and then proceed to drive?
Well, this is precisely my lane for I guess two reasons. One is this book series, the writer of whom we're talking about, uh, was written in the late 90s, and that was prime time for me. I had no friends. I just read a lot. And my mom got me these books, and I literally grew up with them. It was a big part of my life. I'm sure a lot of people my age who were of the literary nerdy persuasion did too. In fact, I know a lot of people my age are too.
It's interesting because you and I are only about like 6 or 9 months apart.
Yeah.
So when living in America, but with the books coming to America, because when they came out in Britain, you know, there was like enough of a difference, I think maybe about a year or so difference between those releases. But when they came to America, that's when book 1, the main character was 11, so we would have been 11. So when we say we grew up with the series, we literally grew up with the series. So the last book came out when I graduated high school.
It was November 2001, I think, if I remember correctly. Oh, no, that was the movie. Sorry, I lied. It wasn't the book. When did the book come out? We're going to figure this out together. 98. So I was right. 98, so I would have been 7.
Well, remember, that's when it came out in Great Britain.
That was the U.S.
That was the U.S.?
Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure I got it for a Christmas present. Because my mom went to like a Barnes & Noble or Borders or whatever and said, what's popular fantasy with the kids these days? And someone directed her toward this, at that point, one book.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it came out later. It must have. You know what, though? I think I
really kicked it.
I think around the time the movie came out is when there was like that little resurgence of it. So that came out closer to when I was 11.
I think the movie came out around the same time the 4th book came out. And they were both really, really big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's I literally grew up with the series and I was fond of it. And the most bizarre thing to me was how much more the adults in my life were into it than me. Like, I had more than one adult in my life indulge in buying me stuff from the series because that means they got to get it some too.
Yeah, it was kind of the same with me. I believe my stepdad was pretty into the first couple of books. He was also into a series of unfortunate events.
Yeah, and that's weird. A series of unfortunate events, if I can kind of derail this because I find it very fun to talk about. I did not read that until I was a junior in high school. And I appreciated it because even though I was not the target demographic for those books, like they're written with the children's intelligence in mind and treating them like adults. So as an adult, you can appreciate it.
And there are definitely, especially as those books go on, more adult themes and a definitely dark and kind of wicked sense of humor in them.
Mm-hmm.
I, once again, grew up with them. I remember them being Old Man Amanda. I remember when they were being released. I remember being in elementary school and watching a video talking about the mysterious reclusive author, and they only talked to his publicist, Handler, who is the person who wrote the books, but put on like this full facade.
Yeah, it's
like he's on the run, and it was actually a lot of fun.
It's so funny because I remember being in grade school, not reading the books, but knowing all of that, and I always thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I totally bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that was 99. I just looked up the year the first book in a series came out. And
Yeah.
yeah, I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I'm like, who is Lemony Snicket? It couldn't be his publicist, and it's totally his
No, of
freaking
course
Of
not.
course, it's his publicist. He's going to like book signings and stuff.
But,
Uh,
with a series of unfortunate events, those are great books for developing critical thinking skills,
hmm
as is the facade of Lemony Snicket, which I
And
think,
they're
that,
not very problematic. So read those. The end.
yeah, read those. But besides having grown up with the series in question, English
hmm
is kind of your thing.
Oh yeah, I literally have like a whole ass degree in it.
Yeah.
That
And
language I was born to speak.
there's this debate that I keep on seeing on my feed. And what it is primarily has to do with the intent of the author versus the community that has grown around the series. And I keep
Yeah.
seeing people saying, we, the fans, have created such a community around the series that the author is no longer relevant. And we can enjoy this without her influence. And we can enjoy this without, with clean hands, more or less, I think is
Yeah.
sort of how that's the implication.
Well,
And
what people are straight up saying, they're actually throwing out the phrase "death of the author,"
well, that would be allies.
which is a thing, but I don't think it is what people think it is. So I kind of
No.
want to get that into that for a tick, because I had to go through Lit Crit, and it was bad and painful and really
Yes.
interesting and great. So
It,
I'm gonna throw a little Lit Crit at your face in a bit
yeah,
here, but finish your
I
thought.
want you to. I want you to, because I'm noticing this coming from two different fronts. I'm noticing this coming from trans allies, which is probably the heavier group of people that I see using that. But
Yeah.
there's also a significant amount of trans and non-binary people who are saying, this is our product now, and we can do whatever we want with it, who are sort of giving credence to that whole idea that you can apply death of the author here. So, from somebody,
I would argue you can't.
I would argue the same thing, but you're more eloquently equipped than me to address it.
Yeah. So if you want me to get into that really quick, or not even really quick, it's probably going to be the bulk of what I have to say about this whole thing.
That's why I have you on here. That's why I want you to talk about this.
So, before I get into this, I had to take literary crit in college, and it was, growing pains. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
It was like your brain growing pains. Like, you would leave, and your brain would just ache because you had to shovel so much information. It was a 3-hour night class.
Oh my God.
And it hurt, like, physically, to sit there and have it all shuffled into your brain. So I might have missed some stuff, but I feel like I got most of it, at least in this part, because it's used a lot, like, colloquially. So it's often used, death of the author, is disregarding an author's intent in order to focus on a reader response filter. So in New Criticism, which Death of the Author kind of came out in the middle of, the focus was on close reading to see the text as a self-contained entity. So whereas earlier readings of text would say, oh, well, this author, kind of the reverse would be like Shakespeare. Like, well, maybe he had a weird relationship with his mother, because that appears in a lot of Shakespeare's writings.
Yeah.
Maybe he did this or that, and trying to kind of reverse construct the author from that. But also the biographical, like, Kurt Vonnegut was in World War II and saw these bombings, which inspired his work. And, that kind of thing was really how criticism was done before new criticism. Now it's more about your relationship to the text.
Yeah, and I can even remember like anybody who grew up in the 90s and had the kind of giant reading textbooks.
Yeah.
You know, they would usually have like a little preface before the stories we'd have to read about this is who the author is. This is something that happened that's relevant to this story. So keep that in mind when you read this story. But that's also what you do with grade school children.
And the other thing they do with grade school children that really isn't a thing in this school of thought is like they're like, you're not going to see my air bunnies, but correct answers and correct ways to read a text. Like the singular answer. Like I couldn't give you a multiple choice question on what is this about, and you would have to pick A, B, C.
Yeah.
It could be all of them. It could be none of them. It's all how you argue it.
There was somebody who did that when, what was her name? Crap. One of the English teachers at our high school, when we read A Christmas Carol, she had a definitive theme of the book, and I hated it. Because I was like, how dare you reduce this story to one theme?
Well, teachers got to give out grades, and that's the way to do it. And it's not primary school is not really meant to expand your thinking. It's meant for you to get a right answer and move on.
But it was so weird because she sort of demanded more. Like, that was the only time she ever sort of settled for, like, a simple answer. And it seemed like everything else in her class was, like, much more sophisticated. I'm like, really? Really? You're going to push us on everything else, but, like, this is your cheat sheet? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think everyone deserves a break at some point, so I'm not going to rail her too hard for that. I can't even remember her name.
Teachers.
Yeah. She was fine.
I would say that close reading, if you're going to cry Death of the Author through Harry Potter, you can't ignore the issues in the text. Which is like, for example, the hooked-nosed goblins who are just really naturally good with money. The slave race that loves being a slave race and speaks broken English and just loves to serve people because that's how they were born. Like, that's all text. That's not reading anything about She Who Must Not Be Named Twait or what she said after the books were done.
Yes.
That is a close reading of the text. So if you're going to holler about Death of the Author and how She Who Must Not Be Named shit.
That's okay. I'm the one editing this, not you.
She Who Must Not Be Named says on Twitter, you can do that, but you can't then, with that same Death of the Author-y lens, go to the book and ignore the deep, problematic readings of the text.
And it's like, I think what's the most troublesome too is like, if we're going by the text, I'm trying not to like go too far into her ideology, but her ideology does try to value cis women, and all of the cis women in that book, I mean, they're meant to serve men. Every single one of them. Like, or ultimately they
there's no queer representation really, so they all end up with men, except for I would argue the one case being McGonagall.
Well,
she ends up headmaster, ends up fighting against Snape. I don't think women is her issue. I think for all of She Who Must Not Be Named's bad beliefs, the F in her TERF badge is not really in question.
Yeah, I only bring it up because I feel it's so hypocritical
Mm-hmm.
for her to be on this podium and talk about what it means to be a woman and what womanhood is, but in
Yeah.
her works, it's still rather stereotypical and subservient.
Well, it's still, for that, it's still kind of kick the dog kind of thing. Well, yeah, I'm a woman and my position kind of sucks. I can write female characters, but at least
Yeah,
I'm not
poorly.
these lower people who would be the queer and, trans.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you don't have to dig too far deep to find her hatred of the other. You can't see my bunny ears. Um, but the things that she claims to care about are still underrepresented. And I think
I think the women in the book are pretty strong, as where it doesn't give way to I don't know how to phrase it, but the poorest written characters are the characters of color.
yeah, no, that is
the
absolutely true.
Sisters and Cho Chang.
Not to mention I can't remember. I think there was an Indian girl in Gryffindor. Twins, actually.
The Patel twins. That's what I just said.
Patel twins, yeah. So, but like again, the Patel twins.
Huh?
You couldn't come up with a better name. That's basically the Indian equivalent of Smith.
And Jordan? Oh, Jordan. What's his name?
Oh, I can't remember his last name.
Was he a character of color in the book?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was. I think he was just in the movies.
You know what? I don't know. I don't know, and I kind of don't care.
Yeah. No, the movies are kind of excluded from this conversation because they were out of her.
So yeah. I'm not going to dwell on it for too long because I actually don't want to get into the different characters because I kind of don't want to talk about the series. I want to talk about.
There are plenty of videos on YouTube and other people who are more qualified than well, not more qualified, but who have done deep dives on it. I'll send you a link to a video I watched recently.
Who is it by?
Long. It is by Satan Madpun. I was directed there through a YouTuber that you recommended, actually.
Oh.
Took me to Thought Slime. Took me to this guy because he was mentioned in another one of his sections. So it was a convoluted little path that took me down to this guy. But
okay.
So back to Death of the Author for just a second too. The other part of it that I have issue with people talking or applying it is, and this is a quote born straight of Wikipedia, but it's a quote from the original. The scripter, which is the author, that's the phrase he uses, exists to produce but not to explain the work, and is born simultaneously with the text, is in no way equipped with a being preceding or exceeding the writing, and is not the subject with the book as predicate. So, basically,
that's a lot of words.
The scripter makes the book, and then their kind of half of the deal in the reading of the text is to then give it to the reader. They kind of birth it in, they midwife a work into the world, and then give it to the reader and say, I am no longer part of this. If you want to see a good version of this that actually works, look at John Green and The Fault in Our Stars and his character in it. He actually has like kind of a self-insert character. Not really, but it's kind of how he feels about text, which is like they want to go see this reclusive author that the main character is a fan of, and she asks what happens after the book ends. It ends like mid-sentence. And he's like, how would I know how the book ends? I don't have any more idea than you would. And she's like, but you're the author. And he's like, yeah, that doesn't mean I know what happens when the book ends. Like, after the ending of the book, I have no clue. So,
that actually kind of reminds me, it's not necessarily a literary work, but I was watching an interview with the creators of Ren and Stimpy.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the years, people have always questioned whether or not Ren and Stimpy were just friends or if they were gay.
Mm-hmm.
And the main creator was like, that's their business.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I
not gonna
kind of feel,
intrude on their life.
yeah, it's like I might have created them, but like that's all I did. And this is the product. And we're not asking you to bring your interpretation necessarily, but
Yeah.
Sometimes those kind of questions don't bear relevance, like,
It reminds me of when people would ask me in high school if I was like a lesbian or whatever, and I'd be
yeah,
like, well, do you think I am? Because the answer to that question seems to matter a lot more to you.
yeah,
And yes, I
and
was a pretentious little 17-year-old shit. Get off of me.
I was worse
Yeah.
because, you know, I would say, because nobody would even ask me that, they would just assume.
Yeah.
And I would usually say things like if a guy was asking me, like, or not even asking, just like calling me a name, I'm like, you're just jealous because I've slept with more women than you.
Yeah.
You know, I raise the stakes of absurdity,
Yeah. And they
uh
always paired me and you together, which I always thought was pretty funny. But
that's hilarious because we're
we're
we're we're essentially wives, but we're like the most asexual romantic couple.
yeah, we're two old gay men who are just kind of like over that part of our lives. Like, yes,
Oh
I
my
did some
goodness.
wild and crazy things, but now we're just gonna sit on the porch and drink sweet tea and bitch.
Yes.
We don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue with that idea is, oop, she who must
Well,
not be named. Damn it.
so three. So take a breath. Take a breath. 3, 2, 1.
If you say her name 3 times, she'll appear. It's like Candyman.
That is an insult to Candyman, and believe me, at this rate, I would rather be disavowed or disavowed. That's not the word I was looking for.
Disemboweled?
Disemboweled. Yes.
Jordan Peele's doing a remake of Candyman. Anyway.
Yeah, that was on the works for a while. I have no idea when that's going to be released.
He's a busy man. He has things to do. Like
I
Lovecraft
know.
Country.
I know, but
But
damn it, I love Candyman.
I love Jordan Peele. He can do anything.
I know. So wait, we're getting sidetracked here. 3, 2, 1.
I hope they keep the counting down in there. It's pretty fun. But she who must not be named is like the freaking Frankenstein of literature. It's not a good faith. It's a bad faith argument for death of the author because she refuses to give the text over to reader interpretation and
Mm-hmm.
decides to keep on telling you how it's supposed to be read
Yeah,
or
like
the lens with which you are to view it.
you know what's wonderful is how like over time you expect authors to maybe give you like little breadcrumbs on how to interpret work, or like if there was maybe like a throwaway comment or a fan theory, sometimes they indulge with them every so often.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be like that over the course of your life. It's another thing about, oh, I don't know, 2 months after the final book in the series is released, to correct people into thinking that a character who has never come out in his own series is gay.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Dennis and I were talking about it earlier with Dumbledore being gay.
Yeah, because like again,
that,
that wasn't something that she did years later. That was like
but,
months after the last book was out.
yeah, when that was spewed forth from the gaping maw that is the author of these books, I was willing to I was still a fan. I'm still kind of a fan of the books, not of her. obviously.
Mhm.
But I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt because Dennis was like, "Oh, you're just trying to court the L's, the B's, the G's, the T's." But my point of view was, I didn't know my principal's sexuality. He could have been bisexual or whatever, and I wouldn't have known. It's not a thing you would know about your professor or teacher or principal, as kind of Dumbledore was. So I was like, okay, I can kind of see, and like you could just, oh, that's kind of a fun headcanon almost. Like, okay, if that's the lens you want to see Dumbledore through, that's fine. I'll give you that. If she had shut her mouth after that, it would have just gone to the wayside, and no one would have needed to worry about this being problematic again.
But
Stop! Stop being awful.
yeah, it's baffling to me how
Go away. That's like when people talk about, yes, Lovecraft had troubling and deeply not good things to say about race. Tolkien had some troubling and not great things to say about race. C.S. Lewis shoehorned Christian iconography into his books.
yes.
As long as there has been time, there will never be a perfect author. And I actually shared in a group I'm in, asking for people's feedback on this subject and how they feel about it. And if they can, in good faith, still support financially or still be a fan or whatever of this series, knowing what we now know. And one of the people in this thread said, if you're looking for a perfect artist, you're going to have very little art to talk about or to enjoy.
Yes.
And I'm not looking for a perfect artist. I'm looking for someone who has some freaking self-awareness.
Well, you know what?
Maybe? Is that what I'm
If
looking
we're if we're going for something like that, a really good area to look into is sci-fi, because even though we have some real scum of the earth writing for sci-fi these days in both literature and for movies, you have people like John Scalzi, who in his earlier works, I would say that he wasn't necessarily problematic, but he definitely fell into like a lot of sexist tropes in his book. But as an author and growing in his field over time, he became more aware and relied less on those tropes. And from leaving those behind, became a much better storyteller. So I think you have a lot of that in the art field.
And from the world of sci-fi, Ender's Game and that author.
Oh dear God. That
he was kind of a proto, but those books were never as popular or ubiquitous as the Magical Boy series.
Yeah, and
therefore he never got as big of a platform.
He didn't, but
also,
he has
his stupidity to blog posts. That
yeah.
It's pretty easy to avoid if you don't want to engage.
I'm not going to blame it 100% on Twitter, because no matter what, people with awful opinions are going to find a way to platform them.
Yeah.
That's the technology be damned. The only thing it does is make it spread faster. That kind of comes with its own problems, but it's not like if the internet didn't exist, she wouldn't have found a way to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not blaming Twitter. I'm just saying it gives an easier platform for you to spew your garbage opinions. And her fan base is 5 times the size of OSC's.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a factor, but anybody who's stepping into this, like wanting to talk about it, like if your blame is going towards Twitter, like you really, really, really need to set your focuses elsewhere, because that's the tip of the iceberg.
If the problem is you've learned more about the person and you wish you hadn't, then you probably need to look within yourself and see why you wish that you didn't know as much about this person as you did. so
Well,
you could continue to enjoy what you wanted to.
well, that's what I was saying last week is when you're trying to leave the bigotry behind in things, the very first thing you should do is ask yourself, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And if your answer is because I have seen a truth that I can no longer unsee and I don't believe in that, like that's a good reason. If you have people that you love that are affected by that bigotry, or even if you don't know anybody, but you're sympathetic,
Yeah.
Empathy goes a long way. But if you find yourself wanting to leave that behind because liking it makes you look bad, you might want to think a little bit harder too. Like, just because we're telling you it's probably a good idea to leave the series, don't listen to us.
And the other thing that people were saying is they still plan on buying fan merch and stuff like that. And I get that feeling, and that they're not going to buy anything that's branded anymore, essentially. I get that, because I like my merch too. But is going out in public wearing branded merch, is that not tacitly endorsing this creation and that creator?
So that was actually something else I talked about last week, but this comes from if you absolutely cannot divorce yourself from something that you love, and like if you absolutely still have to like partake in it, like don't just think, okay, I'm not going to contribute to her financially, I'm going to contribute it to somebody else. Like, no, really think about what you're doing. Think about what person is creating this. Is it just another system?
The people who create branded like fan art like that, they're making other shit.
Yeah.
Like you can buy their other stuff and still support them.
Like, and another thing too, it's like think about like what you would be willing to spend on your house's coffee mug. Go find a trans artist, ceramic artist who makes coffee mugs and give them that money instead. Think a little bit harder about that kind of thing. Or again, if you absolutely want to engage with it,
don't go out with that branded fan art created mug and then be surprised when people side eye you.
Okay, that's actually a really good point.
That's what I mean. Like, okay, another problematic human being. There is a makeup person who has racist, problematic views.
Ooh, we're not going to talk about him.
I'm not really going to.
Yeah.
Jerome Moon, let's call him. Just
the cow that jumped over the moon.
Jack Moon, just pulling it out of my butt. But if you are sent some Moon cosmetics in the mail as PR, say, and you want to review it for your small YouTube channel, that is still you didn't pay any money, you didn't give any money, you didn't financially support this problematic human being. But going out in public and broadcasting this person's product is still kind of a tacit endorsement of it. Is kind of my point.
That's why, like we might mention a name here or there in this episode, but like when I have it written down, I'm not writing any of it for the same reason.
Me, Jerome, I'm not mad at you. But I am mad at you. I'm not scared of you, is what I'm not.
Yeah. And the beauty gurus are less of my thing and more of your thing. Although I indulge. I do. So
I try to stay out of the drama-ish part, but
The other thing too is when you're talking about the fandom, when you're talking about people who enjoy something that's problematic, but they're the targets of the bigotry, that's where I think people who are allies really need to listen, because here's something that I can relate to, and actually you can too, to a certain extent, Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
There are a lot of younger people who do not like Rocky Horror Picture Show, and because its creator also is a little bit on the TERF side. Although I don't even say Richard O'Brien isn't even a TERF. He just straight up said, like, a trans woman can never be a real woman. But I wouldn't necessarily call him a feminist. So there's that. But this is something that has existed for such a long time. Like much, much longer than that book series has been around. And for a very long time, that was the only thing queer people had that was fun, that sort of celebrated the weirdness and the obscurity. And even though, like, the trans representative in Rocky Horror Picture Show is sort of a villain, he's also incredibly charismatic and likable and charming.
The most likable character in the show.
Yeah, so it's like it was something worth
like
celebrating. Yeah, like I said, it's not that you can't question it, but when members of the community tell you that this is something that meant a lot to me and this is what I'm taking out of it, you should listen.
If there's a
Rocky Horror is queer
who
specific.
sees themselves in whatever fandom, far be it from me to say, no, you can't have that thing.
Yeah,
that's just
so
another form of bullying.
Yeah,
like,
it's you have to make sure that you're not doing stuff like that.
But I want to make sure that who I support and whose merch and message, therefore, that I kind of broadcast to the world is not excluding anyone by being there like that.
Yeah.
Like, Rocky Horror is... I didn't actually know that about Richard O'Brien. I could see people maybe taking offense at a Rocky Horror shirt and its views, but also kind of the same thing with Lovecraft and Tolkien. It was a different time.
Yeah, but like I said before, whether or not things are a product of their time, if something is offensive to a certain group of people, listen to what that group of people is saying, not the allies. And this is where I'm going to get up on my little NB soapbox a little bit.
Get up on it.
I'm getting on it. If you are an ally to trans and non-binary people, and you are taking more offense to something than your trans and non-binary representatives, let them talk.
Let them lead, really. It's kind of the case.
And actually, while I'm at it,
it's kind of the case with people of color, too.
I was going to say, if you are not Black, if you find that something is problematic or racist, listen to the Black community first before you say anything about it.
Yeah. If you don't have anyone that in your life, then, like, kind of Google it. You can take the temperature of how people feel.
Yeah. It's sort of like, I'm trying to think of, like, a good example, but, like, saying, like, Tyler Perry's movies are offensive and stereotypical. Okay? So, here's the thing, though. Whether or not that's true is kind of a mixed bag. It literally depends on who you ask. There are a lot of Black fans of Tyler Perry who enjoy his movies and see it as being very satirical. They enjoy his work because they don't take everything with a grain of salt. But there are other people who do find his movies very offensive, not just because of the material and the stereotypes that are in it, but just because they're not funny.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I fall.
That's also not, that is not my place to say.
My mom and stepdad really like Tyler Perry movies. We had a conversation about this a couple weekends ago, and I was just like, I don't like them. And they're like, why don't you like them? It's so funny.
I was going to say, his dramas to me tend to be funnier.
Yeah, same here. Medea, I can't.
I can't with Medea.
And I didn't really want to sit there and talk about the issues I have deeply with Tyler Perry movies. And
but again,
in particular.
But any criticism that I'm going to have about his movies is not necessarily, any criticism that I have of him is going to be secondary
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even mention like my personal thoughts on the matter too much without listening to the people those movies are made for, which are definitely not for me.
Yeah, it's just like I know they're not for me, and I respect that, and
Mhm.
I internally accept that they're not funny to me, but
Mhm.
because they're largely not for me. But I'm not gonna lie, the image in my head of a whole bunch of white people laughing in a Medea movie kind of makes me throw up in my mouth
Yeah,
because of we live in a society
we live in a society. Um,
because of the connotations.
and again, like the black critics of his movies are mixed, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like I would much rather kind of take it at face value that not everybody is going to like his movies. And I'm also somebody who typically doesn't like comedies in general.
You can
So,
have them. I'll keep Jordan
yeah,
Peele. You can have Tyler Perry.
I don't want
I don't
Tyler
want him.
Perry.
I don't want him. You can have him.
I would say that I'd take Rudy Ray Moore, but he passed away.
R.I.P. You could take Eddie Murphy as Rudy Ray Moore.
I'll take Eddie Murphy. Just I'll take Eddie
Did you
Murphy.
watch that movie? It was pretty
Yeah,
fantastic.
I love Dolomite is my name.
Yeah, it was real good.
Yeah, it's if you want like an instant like pick me up feel good movie, watch that movie.
If you want
But
an instant pick me down movie, try Lovecraft Country.
no, thank you. So,
No, it's
uh,
fantastic.
no, I don't need anything to drag me down further into the hellscape that I'm already living in.
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
I think I've covered just about everything that I wanted to cover. Did we have anything else to say regarding like how are we handling this hot pile of garbage?
I think there is no easy answer. I know
Mm.
what my personal answer is, which is
Mhm.
I am not buying any of this person's anything. I'm
Mhm.
probably not buying anything related to this person's anything. I don't think there's a one size fits all answer. I feel like you have to go with your gut. I feel like we should ignore her on Twitter and everything she as a human being does from now on. Because the only thing that I wanted to say is if you're sticking around in the hope that she's going to change her mind and might grow as a human being, I can guarantee you she's getting a lot of negative feedback from trans people and their allies about this. And she is getting love bombed by TERF.
Yeah.
They're going, oh yes, you're so right. Gender is like all those people
Mhm.
are sucking up to her big time and will give her plenty of money. So,
Yeah.
as
It,
for me personally, I am gonna read Earthsea, which you should
oh,
read.
yes. Yes.
Ursula Le Guin. White characters are a minority in her books, which is a great thing.
Yeah, I am also ignoring this author like the plague. Anybody who's listening to this right now, if you feel the need to spread information about her current meltdown and tweets and bickering, do yourself a favor and don't share those. Because
just,
anytime you're sharing articles with her name in it, you
it's gonna
are getting
trend.
her more traction.
Yeah.
You are adding to the traffic of searching her name.
No, this person is gonna have a platform for the rest of their garbage life and enough money to finance that garbage life for forever. We don't need to give her any more attention.
Now, that said, I did click on only one article regarding this person. And it's because Judith Butler had an interview regarding her recently.
Okay.
And if you don't know who Judith Butler is, take a gender studies course. Google. Now, what was interesting, this is from Pink News, who I don't particularly like, but this interview's been posted on a couple of different sites. The interviewer was being particularly harsh about the way Judith Butler was responding to the author in question. Like, don't you think you're being a little bit mean? Was more or less the interviewer's tone. To which Judith responds, I confess to being perplexed by the fact that you point out the abuse leveled against the author, but you do not cite the abuse against trans people and their allies that happens online and in person. If we are going to object to harassment and threats, as we surely should, we should also make sure that we have a large picture of where that is happening, who is most profoundly affected, and whether it is tolerated by those who should be oppressing it. It won't do to say that threats against some people are tolerable, but against others are intolerable. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there.
Yes. Thank you, Judith
All know
Butler.
for a reason.
Yeah, she is wonderful, and like I said, if you have no idea who that is, and you kind of sort of care about gender and sexuality freedom and stuff like that, like, she's awesome.
Yeah.
That is what a radical feminist sounds like.
Yeah, a non-problematic one, as far as I know, at least. I mean, everyone's problematic.
Non-exclusionary. It's nerf
There
or
we
nothing.
go.
Well, thank you for having this rather serious discussion with me, but I got some bad news for you.
What?
Next week we have to talk about Once Upon a Time.
Son of a bit, and it's not on Netflix anymore.
What?
It's on Disney Plus only now.
Oh shit, I can't watch it.
You're gonna have to bow to the mouse, Sam.
I can't afford that.
Embrace the mouse, Sam.
Wait, Amanda. What if we talk about something else that
Nope.
isn't Once Upon a Time?
Embrace the mouse. The mouse is love. The mouse is life.
I'm not buying into mouse propaganda because I literally can't afford it.
The bad news is you premised our show based on a mouse propaganda.
Well, there's plenty of mouse propaganda that I could scoop up from somewhere else.
Or I could just give you my Disney Plus login.
Okay.
The power. We must seize the means of mouse production.
Okay. I thought we were going to end it on Judith Butler, but no, we're ending it on that.
Viva la revolution.
Okay, everybody. I am Sam Longston.
I'm Amanda Pierce.
And remember, it may not be the end.
It may not be happy.
But you are always welcome to this party. Take care of yourself.
Do, 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 do.